Saffron, and welcome to another video. Before we get started, I would just like to apologize in advance if you hear any traffic noises, as I live on a very busy street. I'll try my best to cut out the worst of it. Also, I'm going to be reading from notes because I am on gabapentin. What is a memory? I don't know her. Yeah. It works for my pain, but what is having a mind? I don't remember. So, this is a much belated introduction to the first sewing vlog of my 1890s project. I'm starting from the inside out, of course, with the truly Victorian TV102 chemise and drawers. Combinations would also be appropriate for this era, but I wanted something more versatile and felt like sewing two things instead of one, I guess. I've needed to rewrite this before filming, but I didn't. So everything is already done. I'm actually wearing it right now under this sweater. I finished the chemise around the end of October, and then I only slowly started on the drawers in mid-December. We can thank a glorious combination of ADHD and bipolar for this, as I've been swinging along other projects, as well as a general lack of motivation for quite a while. You know how that happens. You're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna lay in bed and watch Harlots 4 times in a row because that's a good time. So I wound up buying this fabric the same week as I bought all my patterns because I wanted to start as soon as possible. I wanted to get all this done, and then I was really slow at making it. Logic. I do prefer linen over cotton for my under things, though cotton would be perfectly accurate for this point in time. I have PCOS and endometriosis, so my hormones are insane. I've also been having hot flashes in my early 30s and night sweats, so that's fun. So we want to make sure I have a fabric that helps maintain my body temperature and moisture control. Cotton's not great at that. So my impatience in buying fabric meant that I was limited in what I could afford to buy that week. So I couldn't quite afford 100% linen, but instead I went with a 55% linen, 45% rayon blend from fabric.com. It's very cheap, and I need a lot of it, so that was great. I spent most of last summer in dresses of a similar blend, and so I know it's quite comfortable for me in the heat. It, does the job of managing moisture. What else was there? It also, I have yet to personally work with 100% linen, but I have heard from other crafters that linen is really squiggly and like a bit difficult to work with sometimes. This linen rayon blend, actually, the rayon really helps control the linen, and it's really easy to work with. So I would definitely want to work with this particular fabric again. And I would also like to make a little disclaimer about rayon, because I've seen people lump rayon in with polyester as being a thermoplastic fiber, and rayon is not. It is a cellulose fiber, much like linen and cotton are. It is derived from plants. I don't remember right now exactly what plant. I think, if anything, it's not rayon is not plastic, it's more paper. And in fact, if you scorch it with your iron, it smells like burning paper. And I actually did that quite a few times during this project. It's, this particular fabric is very scorchable. I made some leggings last summer out of a cotton rayon blend, and they didn't scorch at all. But this one, even ironing on the cotton setting, which I did with my legging material, this stuff just if you leave the iron on half a second too long to press your seam, which I tend to do, you scorch your fabric. However, that like discoloration from scorching does bleach out quite easily. So just a little run through the washer with some bleach, it's fine. Yeah, I don't know what else I wanted to include there, yeah. So I cut the largest size for the chemise out of habit because in most patterns I'm honestly a little bigger than the biggest size. In this one, my bust measurement is actually not the largest size. That is cool. The instructions said to select your chemise by the bust measurement, and I just went biggest size, okay, which I think the biggest size, if I remember correctly, is a 56-inch bust, and I have a 52-inch bust. It's okay if it's a little roomy. So let's do the little fashion show now. Actually, it turned out that going with the largest size was the best idea. It is, of course, quite roomy in the bust. That's fine. It's a little snug in the arm, though. I do have somewhat broad shoulders. I actually find that women's shirts, like women's button-up shirts, are just too tight in the shoulders, but men's are perfect. So that did affect the fit here. So perhaps if I make this again, I might grade it up a little bit. The drawers also, you're supposed to go by the hip measurement, and depending on the day, sometimes I am bigger than the largest hip measurement that Truly Victorian offers. I think they go up to, I think it's 56 again for the largest size, and I waver from 55 to 60 in the hips because endometriosis makes you bloat a lot. It's very fun. What is a consistent size? I don't know. The drawers actually came out pretty comfy. They're a little loose in the waist because I have a very drastic hip spring. I could make the buttons tighter, or I could just leave them because, again, bloating. Maybe I will fill it out one day because I'm just mega bloated. It happens. The seat is actually comfortable. I can sit in them just fine. I can use the bathroom in them just fine because, split crotch. The only part of the drawers that's too small is the leg bands are just a hair too small. I can get them on over my calves, but I have to like very carefully making sure I'm not ripping all the hours of hand sewing that I put into that. I did French seams on the chemise, but I did one side at a time, and I messed it up, and so one seam is on the outside. That's lovely. It's fine with underwear, who cares? So for the drawers, in order to avoid that, I just did regular flat-filled seams, because I was like, I might mess that up again. So that takes care of that. I did not record any of the sewing of the drawers because I just didn't. I do have plenty of footage for the chemise. That will go in here after this. I will have to put some music over it because it was filmed while in team meetings and training and watching various YouTube videos and various stuff on Hulu probably. I'm gonna find some royalty-free music to put over my sewing footage because, yeah.
I begin, as you do, with step 1. On this pattern, that is the strap reinforcement, so that your buttons and buttonholes are not in just one layer of fabric, making them a little more sturdy. The instructions on this confused the heck out of me, because there's no pattern piece for this. They just say reinforcement pieces and don't give a lot of detail about what that means, and I could not figure that out for the life of me. I Google it because what else do you do when something confuses you? You use the Google. I did come across Morgan Donner's video for the same pattern, which of course I had watched when it came out, but I didn't recall this detail because it's a small detail. At this point, I was extremely stressed and frustrated that I couldn't even get started, and so I couldn't figure out how to do what she did. So what I did might be wrong, but oh well. I took a 1-inch square piece of fabric, folded the edges under, and applied that to the end of each strap, backstitching it on to make it nice and secure. I'm using a waxed linen thread and a vintage needle from a huge pack that I bought on eBay. And just a little piece of warning for anyone who may be considering changing from our standard Dritz, etc. Needles that are sold in those giant packs at Walmart and Joann's and such. Good quality needles are so much sharper than your standard modern junk needle, and they require a lot less force to get through that fabric, something that I personally struggle with acclimating to. In the process of using vintage needles, I have stabbed myself in the thumb so many times. Fortunately, I've reviewed this footage, have yet to find a spot where that occurs. If it had, I would cut it out because no one wants to see that. No one needs to see that. YouTube might get upset about that because, you know, body horror. But yeah, those puppies are sharp. Sometimes it's a good thing. I also technically sew incorrectly because I use my index finger to push the needle through the fabric instead of my middle finger, which is apparently the correct way to do it. I've been doing it this way for over 20 years because that's how I taught myself how to sew when I was 8 years old and obsessed with Laura Ingalls Wilder from the Little House books. I wanted to be her. That's all I wanted in life in my little child mind. And yeah, I have tried to teach myself how to sew correctly, and it's like starting from step 1 and having to learn how to sew all over again, and I don't have time for that, so I do it wrong. But oh well. Is it really the wrong way to do it if your stitches hold your garment together and you have a finished product? I don't think so. Next, I basted my side seam. This also serves as thread marking my stitch line, so I am using a vintage cotton thread and my hem gauge. I do try, whenever possible, to stitch just to the side of my stitch line so that I can pick that thread out and reuse it in the interest of, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. And for some reason, I am doing this very oddly and not even remotely using my thimble. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's just how it worked out to get the needle through. Sometimes this is kind of an awkward process. Next, I sew my little side seam. I'm doing a French seam, so I stitch quite close to the edge, and I'm using a back stitch to make my seams nice and sturdy. After finishing this step, I will of course go through and pick out my basting thread so that I can reuse it on the other side, which was, by the way, my error in getting my French seams on opposite sides of the garment. I did them at different times instead of at the same time, and that is how I messed it up, and now one seam is on the outside and one seam is on the inside. I I will, in fact, keep harping on this because how did I manage to mess that up so badly? I don't know. Like, I thought when I was doing the second seam that I was making sure to check the placement, and something went wrong. I don't have very good light where my ironing board is, so I haven't filmed myself doing any of the pressing on this project. But the next step is to press your seam. For a French seam, I actually press it 3 times. First, I press it flat as it was stitched to lock the stitches into the fabric. Then, I trim the seam allowance down as close as possible to the stitching line, press the seam open, and then press it closed to make that edge nice and crisp when I do my French seam. And then I just backstitch as close as possible to the encased seam allowance so that everything is nice and neat and encased and not available to become frayed from wear or washing or general friction. The next step is to hem the sleeves. I first experimented with a rolled hem. I didn't like the way it looked. It was a little too bulky on this fabric for my preference. So instead I did a double fold hem. I folded the raw edge over 1/4 inch, pressed it, and then did that again so that it was, of course, encased. And then I just whip stitched that down. And I scorched my fabric a couple times pressing these hems because I was trying to just let the iron sit there and fold the next bit and then move along with my pressing, and this fabric does not like that. So fortunately, as I mentioned at another point in the video, the discoloration from scorching does bleach out. So it was just frustrating while I was sewing it because I kept scorching it, and it was honestly very quick to scorch. It wasn't like I was leaving the iron in place for minutes. It would be a couple seconds while I folded the next inch of fabric and it would have already scorched. I even tried turning it down to the cotton setting. I think I even went down to whatever the setting is below that, and it was still doing it. So yeah, this fabric is just very scorch prone, it seems. So aside from that, it is a joy to work with. So if anyone does choose to make anything out of this, just be aware that it's going to scorch, but you can bleach it out. And it doesn't seem to really interfere with the texture of the fabric at all. It's just your room's gonna smell like burning paper for a little bit is pretty much the only negative there. The next step is to stitch the sleeves onto the body of the chemise. It was at this point that I discovered my folly in my French seam not matching. I had a mild existential crisis about it, and then accepted my fate. After all, that is so much work to undo. The stitches would be so much work to unpick because I had pressed my seams and that locks the thread into the fabric and makes it harder to pick out. It was so much to redo. I just accepted my fate and moved on. I did French seam the sleeves in correctly, so huzzah for small victories. And of course, back stitching at every point because we want this to be a nice sturdy garment, don't we? Yes, we do. The next step is to stitch lace onto the hem of the sleeve, if so desired. I did want lace, of course, so I stitched on this lovely little vintage lace that I found on eBay. It is a cotton lace. It came with this horrendous scratchy polyester net on the bottom of it. So I just, every few feet or so, I would just rip the net off the bottom of the lace and then stitch just the lace onto my garment. Fortunately, the net came off very easily without damaging the lace, because if it hadn't, that would have been tragic, because that would have made this very itchy, and we don't want that. No, we don't. No. This was one of my wonderful eBay finds. I like to troll eBay for vintage sewing supplies, and I found 30 or 35 yards of this lace for like $5, and that was such a good deal. So I bought it, and it came on the plastic bobbin from the store with like some marking about how much it cost originally that, yeah, I don't remember what that was. But yeah, it's nice and pretty and delicate and wonderful for this project. The next step in the directions tells you to zigzag stitch the neckline edge. Since I didn't want to use my machine for any point in this project, I am instead blanket stitching it by hand because that's what I wanted to do. For this, I am using a cheap cotton thread instead of my nice linen thread that gets used on the rest of the project. And I did wax my cotton thread as well. I find that cotton does behave better if you wax it. It tangles up less, it gets knotted less. It's not as good as linen, but it still benefits from the waxing. The times that I don't wax thread are when I need to either pull it out, so when I'm thread marking or basting, or if I'm going to be using, or if I'm gathering, I don't wax that thread because it needs to slide easily through the fabric, and the wax makes it grip onto the fabric and is not conducive to gathering. In all those instances, I tend to use cotton thread instead of linen because it behaves a little better unwaxed than linen does. It's all about knowing which thread to use when, really. I didn't record myself attaching the neckline lace or doing my buttonholes and buttons because I did those sitting in bed, and the lighting in my bedroom is not conducive to filming. It's very orange, which is great for, you know, being cozy and sleepy, but it's also quite dim. So that looks trash on camera. Especially compared to my office, which is either daylight or at night, quite bright lighting, which is way better on camera. So I didn't include those, but now I am hemming the body of the chemise. I did opt to do a rolled hem here because this was going to be covered with a much thicker lace than the hem of the sleeves was. Since the sleeve lace is very delicate, the rolled hem just would add to bulkiness and not look great. but I have a quite big chunky lace for my hem, so the rolled hem is fine. You're not going to be able to see it anyway. And how you do a rolled hem is you just press over. You can finger press it. You don't have to press with an iron. You just finger press over a tiny little bit of your fabric, and then you make stitches just below the fold and just at the top of the fold. And when you have a good amount, I usually go for like about an inch or two. Then you pull it taut and it just rolls right up with a cute little scrunch. It's wonderful. It's very fun to do. Spacing is key. You want to make sure to not have your stitches too far apart, or it won't hold the roll as tight as you want it to. I'm not great at consistency with that because ADHD. What is consistency? I don't know her. I've never met her. If I did, I don't remember. Not my strong suit, but if you're better at that than me, learn from my mistakes. And for the final step of the chemise, it is time to attach lace to the hem if you want lace on your hem. I did use 3 different types of lace on this project because I felt each lace really suited the part of the garment it was on. The neckline lace, of course, serves the purpose of having holes that you can thread ribbon through and then use that as a drawstring. The sleeve lace is nice and small and delicate, so it adds a little touch there without adding too much bulk once I put on a dress or a blouse over it. The hemline has this lovely scalloped detail both at the top and bottom edges, which is quite pretty, and while it's a thicker lace, that's fine at the hem because we want volume down there. We want our skirts nice and full, and yeah, that really helps. It hangs gorgeously. I really like it. I really like having 3 different types of lace on my chemise. By contrast, my drawers are quite plain. I just used my sleeve lace on the hems of the little ruffles. I could have added more lace to them. I could have put some insertion lace in a couple places, but I just didn't feel like it, so I didn't. And I really just wanted to get them done because I had stalled for so long finishing those things. All of my laces are from eBay. I will be, of course, linking all of the items that I use in this project down below. The vintage lace that I used for my armholes, you can't buy because that was the only one, but these other laces, I believe the shops keep them in stock. They're pretty low cost and affordable. They're just, some independent seller in some part of the US selling various trim goods on the eBays for their money. So that is neat. You can, of course, go fancier and find nicer, but this suited my needs.
So here is a more full body view of the chemise. Franklin. Frank is being a noisy boy, so he will say hello. Say hello. Yes, we love attention. Yes, we do. What's going on up there? Huh? What's going on up there? Silly boy. And drawers. These are actually, so I was unsure about how far down the split in these would come. I don't know if that's how the pattern is intended, but it actually, the opening hits right at the top of my thigh. So this is perfect coverage for any, leg chafing that could occur. Just for the heck of it, I'm just wearing this today as my clothes, because why not? And I'm actually going to be walking to the pharmacy later today to pick up my medication. So I get to test out walking in it. Today's actually quite a humid day because it's Iowa, and all the snow just melted, so all that moisture went right into the air. So it is muggy AF. It also rained last night, which, yes, I've heard in some places when it rains at night it makes the next day nice and cool and comfortable. No, it's swamp air here when that happens. Yeah, it's quite muggy and humid, and I'm quite comfortable right now. So, thank you, linen, and my battery is about to die. Awesome. I just want to really quick sneak in what my next project is going to be. It will be this Ageless Patterns short petticoat, because I had intended to have all of this done during the winter. And hell, if I want to wear this at some point in the winter again, I will want a warm underlayer. So this is the 1887 short petticoat adjustable waist 24 to 30, which of course I will have to adjust because my waist is 44 to 46. And that is a lot more. So this is meant to be a warm, shorter internal petticoat that's worn under everything else. The fun thing about the length of this and the length of my little stubby legs, because I'm 5'4", but I am all torso, so I have a 28-inch inseam. I basically don't have legs. So this is supposed to be a short petticoat, but when I hold the skirt, the pattern pieces up to my body, it's longer than floor length. So I'll have to do some adjusting in length and adding in width. That'll be fun. Frank, don't be a jerk. The original was made with a white fleece-lined PK. I'm going to be using an old flannel sheet, because what else do you do with that? You make a nice warm petticoat out of it. That's what you do. Frank has found his fish toy. Yes, attack that instead of your sister. Thank you. So that will be my next project. Hopefully I will update more frequently on the channel. I might also, I'm thinking I will just try and vlog a little bit of all sewing that I do, just so I have more content, because I'm also making items for my personal wardrobe in addition to fun historical stuff. So many circle skirts. So many circle skirts, because they're comfy and easy to wear. So thank you so much for watching if you made it to the end of my blabbering. Well then. And I will see you next time. Please let me know in the comments what else you would like to see, if you would be interested in personal sewing, or my 5 billion mask videos, or 5 billion masks that I'm sewing, because I keep deciding I don't have enough, because, well, how many is enough? I don't know. I get annoyed having to wash my masks weekly, so I'm just like, why don't I just make more? Alrighty, and yeah, let's wrap it up. Okay, bye. Morale, Frank. Frank says bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, he's so cute.